Welcome back. Let's talk about introduction of Tableau and how it is different from the normal Excel or the other analytical tools we use. So some of the big concerns that we have with Tableau that I keep hearing most of the time when I go to my clients is it's too difficult to learn because it's a new tool and it's too expensive. So let's look at those two big concerns that we have. It being too difficult. It is not really different than Excel in any way. Like if you look at Excel, we use Excel heavily for a lot of visualizations. Lot of small business companies, including large organizations, use Excel heavily to analyze their data and have a lot of heavy built business logic in macros in most of the places. So Tableau, when compared to Excel, is not at all difficult. It is rather more easy to learn Tableau in my analysis or in my way of looking at things than learning Excel because Tableau is built for the business so that business does not have to spend more time looking for analysis or trying to fix issues. Rather, Tableau helps them look at the data in a totally different perspective and it gives them so much information with little effort so that they can concentrate heavily on on analyzing the business. The second piece, Tableau is too expensive. We will talk about both of these in our future slides, but just to start off, Tableau has different product families. Tableau Public is free. The only drawback with Tableau Public is anything that you do in Tableau Public should be saved in the public domain, which means anyone can access it. So that's you definitely would not want to have your analysis out on Tableau Public, but that's definitely a place where you can find amazing things that people do. So let's talk about what visual analysis is, and in the next slide, I think we will look at the difference. So when Tableau came out in 2007, the founders of Tableau said visual analysis means exploring data visually. A story unfolds as you navigate from one visual summary into the another. So if you look at it, the underlying data should be the same, but when you're visualizing it in different perspectives, you get you get different options or you get different ways of looking at the same data. So why don't we look at an example of what I'm talking about? So let's say we have some underlying data, which is in this case, let's say we have the sample sales data for a given store. And if you look at it, there are two different visuals in this case. Now let's compare the visual towards your left towards your right. They are exactly the same thing. The only difference in your right is we have highlighted or we color coded the visual on your left using profit. So just by looking at your right image, you can say that tables which in revenue or in your sales is close to about $1.7 million is good in the sale, but the profit you are making is pretty less. So in Excel, you might get visualizations which are very simple to you look at from your left, but in Tableau, you can even enhance the picture that you got in Excel and kind of look at the same picture in a different way. In this case, what we are doing is using the underlining data, we are basically painting two different pictures. The first picture without profit, the second picture with profit. As you can see, this is what the founders of Tableau mean by unfolding a story. So if you see, they say a story unfolds as you navigate from one visual summary into other. So in this case, when business looks at the picture towards your right, the story is starting to unfold where you can, just looking at one simple graph, tell which is your best performing category versus which is your worst performing category. So now let's talk about something called attentive processing and non-attentive processing. So these are exactly the two pictures which are exactly the same. So if you go to your top picture and try to find the number of fives in there, it's going to be pretty difficult. You will take a lot of time. The reason you would be spending so much amount of time up is you're technically looking at one number after one number to find the number of fives and noting them down somewhere. Whereas in the second picture, what we try to do here is we try to highlight the fives for you. So just by looking at it, your mind is attentive enough to tell you that we have 6 fives in this. So this is what visual analytics is. You make the user look for what they are exactly looking for. This way, not going through the entire data, not going through the entire piece of data, we can represent what the users are exactly looking for in our analytics. So this is called attentive processing versus non-attentive processing. The first picture in this case, which is above, is non-attentive processing because you have to basically go through the entire data set for you to find out how many fives it is, and you know how much time it would take. Versus the second picture where we are forcing the user to do attentive processing, we know the user is looking for fives, so our program or our job is to make sure we highlight that so that the user can exactly get what he is looking for. So this is what I call attentive processing and non-attentive processing. So let's look at the same thing, attentive and non-attentive, in graphs. So for example, let's say we have the same thing where we talked about earlier, where we had the subcategories. Let's roll up one level and we say we have a category which is furniture, office supplies, and technology. Our mind is pretty bad at perceiving angles. So if you look at the first pie graph that is right there, you would not be able to tell which of the three categories that I have is growing in business. But when you look at the second one where we have a line graph of the exact same data, now you can definitely tell that the technology is pretty much moving up, the furniture is declining, and office supplies is pretty much moving up. But the same thing, the big thing you need to realize here is the underlying data for both these graphs is exactly the same. We will basically generate the exact same graph when we go back and when we go back and connect and play with Tableau. But what I'm trying to get you into is the same data, underlining is exactly perfectly the same. We have three different visualizations right now. As you can see here, we have a pie graph visualization, we have a bar graph visualization of exactly the same thing we are trying to do. So there are three things we need to understand in Tableau. The first piece is, what do we need and what is the right way of representing it. So for example, if you're not really aware in Tableau, or if you're not really aware that the right way to do trend analysis is a line graph, you would generate it as a pie graph and give it to the user, and they would not be able to understand what you're trying to say. So you would need to know how to use your tools in the right fashion. So that's what I'm trying to say is, you need to understand the user and let them see what they are looking for. So in this case, we knew the user is looking for fives because that's the question. What the question we were asked was, how many fives do we have in this? And then we analyzed the data set and made sure we highlighted the fives so that the user can only look at the fives. Now let's go back and look at the different Tableau product families that we have and different products we have in Tableau. Tableau has a set of different products. So let's now look at one by one. Tableau Desktop is the version we will be using in this course. The normal license for Tableau Desktop is $995 per PC. You can get a 14-day trial version, which we will talk about in installing. The other options Tableau has is Tableau Online. Tableau Online is a paid service where everything, all the servers that you use or all the infrastructure is maintained by Tableau, and you have certain data limitations there. In data source limitations, in the sense you cannot connect to all the data sources, and it is per user license. So for one user you pay X amount of dollars. Tableau server, on the other hand, is a self-hosted server. It's a server that resides in your development center, where you can add or you can scale up or scale down based on the requirement, and every Tableau user can connect to the Tableau server and perform the queries. The good thing about having Tableau server, especially in an enterprise where you have large organization, is the Tableau server is pretty highly powerful, so all the calculations happen on the Tableau server, so the load on the clients is very less. If you really do not have that much amount of data or that much amount of users for Tableau, I would recommend you going for Tableau Desktop but not Tableau Server. Tableau Public, on the other hand, is a newly released public version of Tableau, which is available for each and every one. It's hosted by Tableau, and the only problem with Tableau Public is that everything that you do on Tableau Public should be saved on Tableau Public, which means that you technically cannot have any of your customer information stored on your Tableau Public, but you can definitely use Tableau Public to do some of your POCs or some of the proof of concepts, or do some analysis with the public available data if your organization uses that. Tableau Reader, on the other hand, is a free reader. It's very similar to Acrobat Reader, available to be downloaded from anywhere. Tableau Reader, if you send your Tableau workbook, it's very similar to Excel workbook, which we send across to multiple people. They would need an Excel to read it, or Excel reader to read it. Tableau Reader helps the user to open the Tableau workbooks that you send and open them and play with the data. They will, please remember, they would not be able to modify anything, but they will still be able to play around with the data. So that's all with Tableau products and in this introduction section. So let's see what we really covered in this section. In this section, we talked about data analysis. What is data analysis? Then we talked about visualizations. We saw two visualizations next to each other and saw the difference on how the story unfolds as we add more and more visualizations. We talked about attentive processing and non-attentive processing and how that could be helpful. And we then talked about Tableau products. In Tableau products, we covered Tableau Desktop, we covered Tableau Online, Tableau Public, and we covered Tableau Reader. So this is kind of a high-level view of what we did in this introduction. That's all in the introduction. So thanks.